In the affordable end of the market, new or unique ideas are actually pretty hard to find. So, when a $70 watch comes around that brings something that really hasn't even been seen before, it's pretty exciting. Addiesdive have pulled just that off with their new dial on the AD2030, seen here in the bronze colorway. So here's a first overall look at the watch. As you can see, a very fun dial. I think it's really convincing and looks great. We'll get to that. We'll get to all of this actually. A pretty classic case style, kind of oyster. And once again, same vein with the bracelet. Pretty normal clasp on the outside. Once you get inside, it's actually milled, which is great to see. Solid case back because it's a Seiko Mecha Quartz movement with the giant Addiesdive logo back there. A screw down crown, actually 100 meters of water resistance, and I think it's pretty convincing. What about you? Let's look a little more close. It's pretty small, with 36 mil in diameter and 46 in lug to lug. It should fit pretty much any wrist. Unfortunately though, it does have mineral glass as the crystal. Underneath that is a Seiko VH31, and it actually has 100 meters of water resistance, meaning this makes a pretty good everyday wear if it weren't for the lack of lume. And here it is on my 7-inch wrist, roughly average. And as you can see, with the small lug to lug and also the small diameter, also it being pretty thin since it's quartz, it really fits well. I know some people would consider this to be too small of a watch, but as you can see on average wrist, I think it looks great. There's also a ton of adjustment levels. There's a lot of removable links, a lot of micro adjust, and so it really should fit you no matter what, and you should be able to get a great fit as well. Let's talk about the brand. Addiesdive is, as its name suggests, focused mostly on homage dive watches at the lower end of the market. Known for their faithful homages of famous diving models, the brand often delivers a product with insane value, with specs that sometimes even often exceed their inspirations, like that of their Seiko homages. Plus, they're usually under $100, and it's pretty easy to see why the brand is popular. That being said, it's still a Chinese brand, so they don't garner the biggest reputation. Moving on to value. At $70, let's compare this watch to maybe something like the Citizen BF0580-57. For materials, the Citizen doesn't even name its used steel, whereas this uses the industry standard. Plus, this has a better clasp on it, significantly so. For features, this watch has more water resistance, a screw-down crown, and a significant movement upgrade as well, with the Seiko Mecha Quartz. I'd say it also looks better, so what is there really to say? The only competition for this watch is models out of brands like Addiesdive, so it's pretty easy to say that this has pretty great value. The case here is a classic oyster style case, and that's about it. It's exactly what you'd expect. My only complaint here is, of course, the omission of sapphire. I really would have loved to see that, especially since it protrudes in the case so much. That will undoubtedly scratch in the future since it's mineral. And the crown is a coin edge screw down crown, which gives this watch 100 meters of water resistance, which is pretty great. Onto the dial. This is really the star of today's show. Not only is it stunning, but the execution is pretty superb. The dial is heavily textured with a gritty and almost sparkling surface, and it's complete with valleys and peaks that are reminiscent of some sort of desert or sea floor from above. The exact patterns of these dunes are actually fixed, so every dial will have the same topography, which is good. From photos, it might not be apparent, but the design is actually three-dimensional. It casts shadows on itself, and the light changes, causing all of the dunes to change where their shadows cast, and it really looks great. It's very convincing, and it's a refreshing idea. I haven't seen a watch quite like this, but I guarantee that we'll start to see more like this. One thing that isn't so great though is some of the branding on the dial. The Addiesdive logo and text are a bit too big above the pinion, and below the pinion at 6 o'clock it says Deep Sea Hunter and the water resistance rating, which for a watch that doesn't have any lume, it's kind of hard to convince us that this is in any way a dive watch, and so Deep Sea Hunter is probably the wrong text to have. But then again, It's all applied, it looks good, and it's done well with good alignment. So at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal since the text is small enough where you might not even see it. Overall, the Dauphine handset looks good, the dial looks good, and it's in a case that's classic. There's no lume, but the movement being a Seiko VH31 means that this is kind of a perfect dress watch for the office, with a little
Taking a
tinge of
look at the
sportiness.
bracelet, it's a 3-link style, pretty classic, especially for this case design. And the clasp is actually better than you'd expect. The outside is pressed, but once you open it up, you see this milled section inside that is pretty high quality, especially considering the price here. It's kind of unheard of outside of other watches from Addiesdive and its competitors out of China. You looking at a watch at this price range for Seiko or Citizen or anything of the big brands, a milled clasp like this is kind of out of the question. And even at that, the worst part, that this pulls hair, it's still much better than any of the bracelets you're going to get from Seiko or Citizen or anything, which is really the comparison point to be making here. It's a pretty good bracelet, and for the price, it's a kind of great bracelet. So that's all there really is to say. It's not amazing, but for the price, it's better than expected. So here's the watch score. All in all, that's a pretty high score, especially since its biggest omission is lume, which is accounted for there because it's a score to describe its daily wear, not as a dress piece, which maybe this leans more towards. All in all, I think this is a wonderful piece. And if you're looking at it and you like the dial and you like the styling of it, and especially getting past some of those text points, I don't really have any arguments against it. It's a great watch and at a absolutely amazing price. On top of that price being, under $100. Sometimes on AliExpress you can see this go for sale, $60 when it's on sale, which is absolutely unheard of. And at that price, there's kind of no reason not to get it. I highly recommend it. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe.